Coming up on Hot Hardware, we're talking about a slim, sleek HTPC from Zotac, RIM's Playbook, and maybe your GPU could be a security threat.
Uh-oh.
Welcome to Hot Hardware, where we talk about the hottest tech out there in the world. Dave, let's hit the first story. We're talking about Zotac's slim, sleek HTPC. It's got a slot-loading Blu-ray drive. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it's about, I don't know, maybe 2/3 of the size lengthwise of your average Blu-ray player that you might have in your home entertainment center, and about the same height and thickness as some of the slimmer ones. And it's actually, yeah, it's a full PC. It's got a dual-core Atom processor at 1.8 gigahertz. It's Atom D525. It's got NVIDIA Ion graphics, so you've got a little bit of extra multimedia horsepower. Nice, sleek, thin machine with an integrated Blu-ray player. You know, I think you were kind of knocking on things like the Boxy Box and Apple TV and these other little streamer devices that, you know, they don't have any optical, they don't have any real expansion capabilities. All you can do is stream. Well, this is kind of, you know, the best of both worlds. It's a tiny, slim device, integrated Blu-ray. You can hook it up, run Boxy on it, hit the internet, game a little bit as well. It's actually pretty impressive.
How did Flash HD do on there?
Not a problem. One of the things NVIDIA had to work on out of the gate with Ion for either notebooks, netbooks, or these little net-top devices, as they're called, was handling Flash, you know, high-def Flash video. They've since got their drivers in order. It's running quite well now. We tested Blu-ray on it. We tested 1080p streaming content from YouTube. We even tested a QuickTime 1080p video clip, handled that like a breeze. And we actually fired up Enemy Territory Quake Wars on the thing, which is a impressive looking game, kind of on the old side, couple 3 years old, but you know, from id Software, so no joke, good looking game, and it ran that pretty well too at 720 or 1080p sort of resolution. So it's got pretty good horsepower under the hood.
Now there's one small caveat, it doesn't ship with an operating system, is that right? Yeah,
that's right. You can get a couple of different SKUs with the device. You can get it fully configured with a hard drive and 2 gigs of system memory. We actually installed Windows 7 64-bit on it, but you can install any operating system of your choice, Linux, what have you. There's also a bare bones offering, so to speak, that does not come with a hard drive or system memory, and you can install your own system memory and hard drive pretty easily into the system. So actually, you know, pretty configurable and customizable to your tastes, and we liked it. It was a good little system to try out.
So Marco, recently a white paper came out saying that GPUs could be a security threat. Could you explain what that means?
Sure, it's kind of interesting. There was a white paper released by some researchers at Columbia University and an institute in Greece. You know, and what they're saying is that all of these newer programmable GPUs, you know, that offer all this, you know, immense horsepower for parallel processing, can be used to execute malicious code. And they've posted an example snippet of code that, you know, could technically be used, you know, for the exploit.
Now, it looked pretty scary because I think the article actually talks about no CPU program could probably even monitor something going on in a GPU. But then again, malware, isn't that written for like the lowest common denominator stuff? So the GPUs that can do this, is this really going to be a widespread problem?
I don't think so. There's actually, you know, lots of holes in this. First of all, anything, you know, any code executed on the GPU, you know, first it has to get onto there, and usually going to use the CPU. You know, a GPU doesn't have any non-volatile memory, so if you shut your system off, there goes the code. It's gone. It's got to get copied back over. If something has to be stored locally, you know, that can be scanned. There's lots of holes here, and it's really just a proof of concept type of thing. But the gist of the story is that these GPUs offer so much performance, you know, for certain types of workloads, you know, that, you know, the malware threat could be huge if every PC with a programmable GPU was used to execute this kind of code.
Any chance this was funded by some kind of antivirus company?
No,
all right,
no,
checking.
Definitely not.
I was going to be a little skeptical. I mean, this seems like it's a little bit overblown. Hopefully this won't be a huge problem. And then again, since nobody could actually monitor it, I don't think anybody would notice it. That's the other
Well, I think they'll figure out ways to monitor it if it ever happened. I don't see it happening because, like you said earlier, this code is written for the lowest common denominator. They want it on every PC, not just a small group of PCs. So I don't know. It was a cool read. Some, you know, interesting, scary kind of possibilities, but I don't think anybody needs to worry.
Hey, where there's a will, there's a way, though, even with the bad guys.
Well,
yeah, true.
We'll see. And if it does happen, I guess we're all in trouble, unless we're using, I guess, Intel integrated graphics, right?
No, then you'll just see NVIDIA come up with, hey, a built-in security engine, you know?
Right.
Ah, interesting stuff. Now we've gone into the forecast method. Let's actually talk about other products that are coming out. Let's talk about a solid-state drive from OCZ that is actually taking advantage of something called HSDL, which I can't remember what that means. Dave, could you explain it?
HSDL is an acronym for High Speed Data Link, and it's actually one that OCZ coined themselves. And it works off of PCI Express. You know, we think of it as sort of a light version of PCI Express, retargeted for this transport medium or for storage. But essentially, it's PCI Express compatible. So what you've got in this drive, on one end, interesting product. By the way, blazing fast. We saw this thing keep pace with products like the IO Extreme from Fusion IO, the 80 gig PCI Express card that costs like $900 for 80 gigs. It's, you know, over $10 a gig. It's crazy. Keeps pace with that. Only we got a 240 gig drive for $739 MSRP. And so what it does is it incorporates a hardware-based processor, storage processor on the SSD itself. And then there's a PCI Express bridge to PCI-X, which actually the storage processor runs over PCI-X, believe it or not. It's a Steelvine processor from Silicon Image. So at any rate, long story short, what looks like a fairly kludgy device, you know, PCI-X based processor on one end with a PCI Express to PCI-X bridge, this new cable, which, you know, it's actually not new, but they're using an existing technology, SAS, serial attached SCSI cable, then plugs into an adapter card that drops into a by-4 PCI Express slot. So all total, the bundle comes together for $739, and it's smoking fast. It's a premium for sure over a standard SSD, about $3.08 a gig, but it flies. Now
RIM introduced its latest new device, and it's not a phone. It's the Blackberry Playbook. Now nobody actually got to touch this thing other than I think the CEO who was walking around on stage showing it off. Everything else was behind glass. Marco, what do you know about the new Blackberry tablet?
So you're right. There's only a few samples were floating around, and a couple were behind glass, and the CEO was showing one off. But the announcement was kind of interesting. So BlackBerry is going to launch a tablet. It's, as you mentioned, called the Playbook. 7-inch tablet, dual 1 gigahertz, dual core 1 gigahertz processor. Sorry, gig of RAM, front and back facing cameras. Basically all the goodies that you want to see out of something like a competitor to the iPad. Something else interesting, recording and playback ability of 1080p video. So that's pretty cool. Another piece of interesting news, it's not running BlackBerry OS. It's running a new OS from a company that BlackBerry acquired. And from the videos that we saw and what we've seen, it seems pretty fluid and pretty smooth.
It's generally a good idea to stay away from that BlackBerry operating system. That thing barely works on a BlackBerry, let alone a tablet. But yeah, from what I've seen, it actually has the dual cameras. One's a 5 megapixel and one's a 3 megapixel. And right. It doesn't have wireless access on its own. It's got to be tethered. So what do you think of that, Marco?
See, that's kind of interesting. It works with Wi-Fi. So if you have Wi-Fi, it'll get on using that. Or it can be tethered to a BlackBerry phone. So if you already own a BlackBerry or on the go, you can get internet that way. It's kind of, an obvious, business type move. They want to get BlackBerry owners with a BlackBerry Playbook. But they did announce that 3G and 4G versions would come after this one.
Now, if it's secure like a BlackBerry, couldn't you just attach it to something like an Android device? Why would you bother using a BlackBerry?
I mean, technically, there's no reason you can't. And if you have a phone that has mobile hotspot, you can connect that way as well. They're just going to put in a mechanism to tether easily with a BlackBerry.
Does anyone have a release date on this thing?
No firm release date. They're saying early 2011. No pricing just yet either. But you can expect it to compete with, the Dell Streaks and the Apple iPads.
I expect it to compete with the other ones, not necessarily the iPad. Dave, you got an iPad. Do you think this thing is going to do something to it?
I don't know. If I was a bet man, probably not.
Just that's it. As simple as that.
Yeah. I think, well, you know what's interesting? I think BlackBerry's right on in their thought process of marketing to existing BlackBerry owners. Let's face it, sort of like Apple, actually, to a degree. BlackBerry owners are very loyal. I mean, you know, there are people that you know, they're on the CrackBerry, man, and they're not coming off. They use it for work. It's attached to their hip all the time, and so you know, that's probably a wise move. But I think there's going to be a ton of slate competition. I think 2011 release is going to be late because Q4 holiday buying season is coming quick, and there's going to be some tablets sold.
Well, I will say there's 2 points to RIM for calling it the Playbook and not the often rumored Blackpad. That sounded like a ridiculous name, and Playbook actually sounds pretty good. Like
yeah, I like that. Agreed.
Some good points there. Let's get to some reader questions. We've got a 2-parter from Bob on the Cob. 1, I just ordered a cheap SSD. What should I use it for to make the best of it? And he points us to a Kingston SSD for about $80. Good
question. Actually, excellent question. And I like, and there's obviously a bunch of different models for use for an SSD. I love them in notebooks, but if you're talking about a desktop system, my suggestion would be to set it up as your operating system boot drive, and you know, keep your non-critical files on it, okay, and maybe set up, you know, a secondary drive, you know, cheap standard spinning hard drive. I like a RAID 1 array, okay, if you got RAID on your motherboard that you can support. Set up a nice redundant RAID 1 array for things like maybe you run Microsoft Outlook and you put your Outlook PST file on there, sort of critical files and information that you can't lose. And then you boot off that SSD, you got a nice redundant RAID array for backup storage to keep your critical files on, and you know, life's good. But I tell you what, that SSD is pretty reliable too, so it's not like you really have to worry about, you know, just because it's on an SSD, you've got some fragility there. It's every bit as robust, we think, these days as the standard hard drive.
That sounds pretty interesting. And the part 2 here, I guess this goes to Marco since Dave hogged the first question.
Nope.
Are you as excited as I am about the new Left 4 Dead 2 downloadable content?
It's actually for Left 4 Dead 1 and 2.
Oh, my mistake.
I am super excited because that is basically the only game I play religiously is Left 4 Dead 2. So I am totally psyched. I actually put 2 stories up on the site. I have screenshots, I have video, have the poster from Valve. The story seems cool. You know, anyone that's played Left 4 Dead 2, the passing map knows that Bill is dead, and we're going to find out how Bill dies. You're going to get to play as the, you know, Left 4 Dead 1 survivors and Left 4 Dead 2. We're getting additional maps. Very, very cool. I am excited. My wife is going to be pissed.
Yeah. She's going to be a Left 4 Dead widow.
Oh, man, she gets so mad when I play, but I don't know. I'm going to have to put in a little more time next week.
Marco, did they beef up the engine at all, or is it still the same engine, just different content? There's new content.
Well, it's the same engine, just new content, but you know, adding new play modes, new maps, cool stuff all around. Just making a fun game funner.
Marco's favorite waste of time, no question about it. I like it too.
Absolutely.
Now, I hear rumblings of a giveaway. I know there's no giveaway right now. Dave, can you tell us a little bit about what's coming up?
We need to pick a winner, and that's coming pretty soon. Our CyberPower and HH Back to School Blitz sweepstakes ended yesterday, and there is a lucky winner out there. And we can't say who it is yet, but we'll know soon. And there is a new contest coming up. Stay tuned. We're going to be drumming that up real quick with probably another kick-ass gaming rig of some sort.
Now, Marco, yes. I'm going to make you do the difficult part of telling everybody where they can find Hot Hardware around the web.
They can find us everywhere. First of all, obviously, you can go to HotHardware.com.
That's crazy.
Please do.
Or you can go to YouTube/HotHardwareVids, Dig/HotHardware, Facebook/HotHardware, Twitter/HotHardware. We are everywhere.
I still suggest going to HotHardware.com because it's the most robust site for all that stuff.
Of course.
Yeah. Hey, did everybody notice that we're a little quicker these days? We had our developer tweaking on site speed, and hopefully we're, you know, slamming some pages at you much quicker now.
I haven't noticed. I have FiOS. It's very fast. And there's a non-sponsored discussion about Verizon FiOS. I think we got to wrap this up. Remember, you can read about everything we talked about at HotHardware.com or anywhere else on the web because, let's face it, we're everywhere. And we'll see you next week.